Welcome to everyone. Today we're going to be reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge. It's fascinating how in the Bhagavad Gita, every time Krishna speaks, it says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. So Bhagavan, the word Bhagavan is being used every time he speaks. It's important to know what that word Bhagavan means, because the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita is being referred to by that name. Incidentally, there are people like Osho who call themselves Bhagavan as well. But let's see if that title fits. And let's see if this title fits with Krishna. Bhagavan refers to the person who possesses all bhagya. Bhagya means good fortune, all that is desirable in the world, all that we all crave. That person who possesses that unlimitedly. Bhagavan comes from Bhagyavan. So, Bhagyavan means to be fortunate. So, what would you consider a person who is fortunate or blessed, or what would you think? A person who has, let's say, great wealth, somebody would say, right? Someone who's got good looks, someone who's very intelligent. What would you say is the signs of someone who is very blessed or is very fortunate or who has great fortune, good, or who's abundant, let's say? This is an open question for all of you. So please tell me, what are your thoughts? What would you consider a person who is filled with, who has got all opulences, all desirable qualities, all desirable things? What would you call such a, what are some of those things? You said this person is very fortunate. This person is very blessed. What would you say? What would they have for you to say that? Anybody want to take a shot at it?
Good health.
Good health?
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Yes, being a health, being in that field, I'm sure that's one of the most important things. Yes, yes. But very few people realize that, don't they? Most people realize it much later in life that health is what matters. They're too busy chasing wealth.
It's necessary, but not sufficient.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So what else would you say? What else is desirable? What else do we consider someone fortunate if they've got? Okay, what's the worldly perception? Let's put it that way. Maybe you guys are beyond all these things. So Rima brings up health. I brought up, for a lot of people, it's wealth. So a person who has great wealth is considered very fortunate, very blessed. He has a lot. What else would you consider for a person who is extremely fortunate or blessed?
Somebody who doesn't have a lot of friction in their lives.
So who's got peace?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any other ideas? Who are the people you look up to, admire?
Wise, wisdom, wise.
Yeah, we've got wisdom. What's the first word?
I say wise.
Oh, is wise. Okay, wise and has wisdom. Correct, correct. All right. Yes. So the word Bhagavan refers, this is how some scholars have broken it up, to say that the person who possesses all knowledge, who knows everything, right? In fact, nobody can claim to know everything. But if there was someone who could know everything, if there was someone who possessed everything, then everything was possessed, owned by that person, right? So all knowledge, all wealth, right? All fame, who was known everywhere, whether you hate him or love him or agree with him or disagree with him, but is famous everywhere, right? All knowledge, all fame, all wealth, all beauty, who is the source of all beauty, right? Who is the most beautiful and is the source of all beauty. All strength, all powerful, and at the same time, all completely detached and renounced. So they give these 6 qualities. Of course, these are put forward by scholars, and I'm sure you can add many more qualities, like Rima added health, and Gabriel, you brought up wisdom. So wisdom fits in with knowledge. The person that possesses all of this infinitely is called Bhagavan. The person who possesses all that is desirable, all that you consider good fortune, all that you consider to be blessed, all that you admire and all that you look up to, that person that possesses within themselves all of that is Bhagavan. Now you tell me, if somebody came along just because they're a guru and they have some big beard and they wear some fancy robes, and maybe they can do a couple of miracles, or they could, even if they could walk on water, or if they could, as they used to call Sai Baba also Bhagavan, they used to call him God. But what he was doing was essentially doing a couple of miracle things, pulling out a watch from somewhere, pulling out a gold something from somewhere. And they say, oh, this is God. But this is foolishness. Bhagavan means that person who possesses all knowledge, all wealth, is known everywhere. Loved or hated, doesn't matter. All beauty, all strength, and at the same time is detached and renounced from it all. So that is, we're going to consider this claim, which is being made in the beginning of every time when Krishna speaks, it says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Bhagavan spoke. That's what it's saying. The great scholars who compiled the Bhagavad Gita refer to him as Bhagavan. They don't refer to him as a mortal being, they refer to him as Bhagavan. Now, whether indeed he is or not is what we're going to learn in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. He's going to make certain claims over here. In the 11th chapter, I think it is, where Arjun will challenge him on those claims. So don't think it's going to go just blind belief or blind faith. Not at all. This is going to be a very interesting next couple of chapters. So let's start. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Arjun, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. It's very interesting. Firstly, there's a number of things he's saying here. One is he's qualifying Arjun as a person who is not envious of him. What does it mean, a person who is not envious of him? Most people don't think of that folks are envious of God. The fact of the matter is, a person who is not willing to consider that there can be a higher power, something greater than themselves, something that knows more than they do, are essentially biased, not willing to consider that possibility. They want to consider that only the human species is the greatest species of all. There cannot be anything greater than this. And that our intellect is supreme, and that beyond that, there cannot be anything. So that means you've put a ceiling that there cannot be something beyond this, whether that is alien life or whether that is God. If you look at it, the sciences that we have such high regard for, and I have high regard for them, but they have a bias. They have an inherent bias when it comes to the topic of God. On the topic of God, in fact, if you go to any university, if you go to any place of learning in today's time, you'll find that there is an actual bias towards God. If you were an atheist, if you talked against God, or you even an agnostic, you would still be considered respectable. But if you said there is a God, then you would be looked down upon and frowned on in most universities, in most academic circles, in most intelligentsia. That is because there is an inherent bias against God. So Krishna is saying here that one who is not biased, one who is not envious, one who is not thinking that there cannot be someone greater than me, I am the greatest of all, my intellect is supreme, that of my species is supreme, there cannot be something beyond this. Such a person is able, such a person who is non-envious, right, non-biased, can actually begin to understand this topic. He then goes on to say, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. You see, knowledge was meant to be for that purpose. We have been accumulating knowledge about all kinds of things, how the body works, how to be able to heal ourselves at a time of illness, how to be cool when it's hot, how to refrigerate our food so it lasts longer. All the things we do in accumulating knowledge have one purpose, and that purpose is to free ourselves from suffering, to make ourselves more comfortable, to make ourselves live longer, to make ourselves have a healthier life, right? But also the comfort of moving from one place to another in an air-conditioned car, and so many other things that we've created, airplanes to go from one place to another, so many products, all of that, all the amazing amount of things that we've created come down to one thing: we want to make life better. But none of them can claim to free us from all the miseries of material existence. What are the miseries of material existence? So miseries of material existence are spoken of in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Vedas as adi bhautik. That means miseries caused by the body, such as sickness, such as any other pain, or you get an accident. All of that are miseries caused by the body, even hunger and thirst. Then adhyatmic, that is miseries caused by other living beings, people who say things to you, people who do things to you, people who don't like you, people who disagree with you. Adhyatmic. No, so I think it's the other way. Adhyatmic is from yourself, adhibhautik is from others, and adhidevic are miseries caused by nature, such as when it's very hot, you have a hot summer, or you have a fire, the whole blazing fires we've been seeing in California, or it gets very cold, or there's a blizzard, or there's a tornado, or there's an earthquake, or there's a tsunami. These are all miseries caused by nature, adhidevic. So that, combined with the basic miseries that we all experience of birth, death, old age, and disease, lead us to think that this world is a place of suffering. Now, I had someone asking about the text that we're reading. I'm going to put it down. I'm just going to show it to you for a moment, and then I'm going to put it down in the chat so that you can download it. All right? This is what we're reading, chapter 9, text number 1. Knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. If you look at Buddha and his entire work, actually, was about how to get people free from the miseries of material existence. And he then spoke greatly about his different processes and his different path for that same intention. When he saw suffering in the world, he wanted to find why there was suffering and how people can get free from it. But thousands of years before Buddha, Krishna was already offering that solution. And while Buddha did offer a very simple process called the Eightfold Path, Krishna is offering you a series of systems of yoga, all of which are designed to come to this place of becoming free of suffering. Give me a moment. I shall pull up this document of the Bhagavad Gita. There it is. I'm putting it in the chat area. So for those of you that would like it, I see it was shared to everyone. If anyone doesn't have it, you can download it from here. Okay. Where was I? So yeah, so the ultimate process of relieving yourself from the miseries of material existence is, he says, is through this knowledge that is here in the Bhagavad Gita. Why is that? Because in here, he gives you the manual for how to live in this world. You might realize when you buy a new, let's say, machine, right? Everything from your car to your phone to your TV comes with an instruction manual. But this incredibly complex computer and this incredibly complex organism that we live in, the human body, where's the instruction manual for that? And how we're supposed to live our lives? The Bhagavad Gita is meant to be such an instruction manual. That, along with the other Vedas, which add more and more depth to the subject matter discussed here, are meant to be. Veda means knowledge. This is the knowledge of how to live in this world and then how to transcend this world. It is the knowledge of transcendence. So once you learn to transcend the world, which means to see through what is going on, to see through the illusion, to see through the mind and the senses, and to begin to understand what really is happening out here. As you begin to do that, you begin to become more and more free from the miseries of material existence, so that when they do come to you, you don't take it personally anymore. You realize, my body is having an experience. My mind is affected by what this person said. My emotions are being affected. I am not affected. I can sit here as the witness and watch my mind getting affected by what somebody said and not taking it to heart, not taking it personally. I can observe what is going on in the world, whether that is the spread of a virus or whether it is the killing of millions of people all over the world, and I can sit there as an observer, neither being happy nor being unhappy, but recognizing that this is the way things are unfolding in this moment, no longer affected by the miseries of the world. I hope you're getting this point. This is the guidance that will take you to that place where you can observe without becoming entangled. This is the place from where you can begin to be in the world, but not of the world, not identified with the world or with the things that are going on. You can even enjoy the world, but not necessarily be suffering because of what is going on in the world. That is the aim. How does that strike you? Is that something that matters to you? Knowledge of how to become free of the miseries of material existence? Do you suffer from any kind of miseries? What are the miseries you experience? Yes, I've got Tia raising her hand. Yeah, hi. What would you like to say?
I think it's so much easier said than done. You know, so many times people say things and they trigger us or they get to us, especially our loved ones. And sometimes, you know, if I don't know, maybe it's an art, but it's
Yes,
just
it is
balance, I guess.
It's an art, and it's an art that has to be learned. And the Bhagavad Gita presents you the process by which to learn that art. So while we can spend the rest of our lives saying it's difficult, I invite you to learn the art. Invite you to become a ninja warrior on this path and begin to understand that the spiritual path is very powerful. It is not a path of, it's not easy. No one's saying it's easy. No one's saying it's easy at all. But it works. It has worked for thousands of years. I can say it has worked in my life. It has helped me step back. It has helped me be more objective. It has helped me take on discussions and arguments and family quarrels and squabbles and things like that that happen. They're just part of life, but in a way that is more balanced, more down to earth, not reactive the way I would have been in the past. See, because it's not personal. And when people are getting all worked up, they're taking things personally. They're taking it about them. But when you know who you are, and that you know you're a spiritual being, while the rest of you is flawed, right? The rest of you is not perfect. The rest of me, the rest of you, the rest of all of us is flawed. There's none amongst us that isn't flawed. There's none amongst us that isn't messed up, that isn't faulty, that isn't in some way not good enough. Absolutely. And yet, there is a part of us that is perfect in every way whatsoever. And that part exists in every single one of us. So the key is to access that part, the soul, the Atma, and bring that into your life. So when there are all these triggers going on, all these situations happening in your life, you are now able to sail the journey of life from your soul and not from your mind and ego. When you live your life from your mind and ego, then everything feels overwhelming because the mind is a very small thing and the ego is always busy with trying to fight for survival. So because of that, you're always in a very fragile place and you're always looking at how to defend yourself. So you need to argue and you need to fight and you need to say things and you react to things and you get upset about things. But when the boat you're sitting on is not a tiny little boat that can be knocked over at any moment, but rather a big, huge ship, that ship of wisdom, that ship of true, deep spiritual understanding, that's what the Bhagavad Gita presents you. This is not a belief system. This is a very practical science, a science of self-realization, which means to learn to awaken the self and through the self, learn to live in this world. So a lot of people have indicated this kind of learning, have talked, like Christ said, to be in the world, but not of the world. But how to actually do that, that's in here. Any other questions you all have before I proceed? Krishna says in the next verse, this knowledge is the king of education, Raja Vidya. Raja Vidya means the king of education. Raja Guyam, that is the most secret of all secrets. Pavitram idam uttamam, it is the purest knowledge. And because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, hear what he's saying. Because this knowledge gives direct perception of the self, the soul, by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and it is joyfully performed. Right? This is, once again, as I was saying earlier, this is not about believing something. It's not just about gaining the knowledge, sitting out here and listening. It's about taking the things you're hearing here and then applying them in your life, starting to live from that place. And the more you begin to apply it, the more you will start seeing the results. But most important here, he says, it is everlasting and is joyfully performed. This knowledge is everlasting. Knowledge of material things keeps changing. Science keeps changing its understanding. But this knowledge, which was first spoken of 5,000 years ago, is still as fresh and still as valid and still as applicable today as it was back then. It will not change for 5,000 years from now, or 10,000 or 15,000 or 100,000 years from now. It will still be applicable. And that's the beauty of it. Those who are not committed or faithful on this path cannot attain me. Therefore, they return to the path of birth and death in this material world. So, being on this path requires a certain level of commitment. See, the goal is ultimately to attain God or Godhead, to attain that place where you can be with the divine, where you can have a relationship with God. But that requires a certain commitment. And without that commitment, he says one comes back again into the material world again and again and again until you commit yourself to this path. So that is entirely up to you. That no one will force you, not even God, right? Each person has been given a total free will to think what they think, feel what they feel, do what they do. A lot of times we get very upset with people who are of different views. It happened during the time of, but it's happened all across the ages. But recently we've seen a lot of that. Because of Trump, it happened, then it happened because of the vaccines now. And now we're having more, people being upset about different things. The point is, opinions will always be there. But knowledge of this kind is not an opinion. It is not subjective. It is objective. Objective because it can be tried and tested and proven by each and every one of you. And it requires a certain level of commitment. If you truly want to get free from the cycle of birth and death, then listen carefully and try to understand what is being said here. Krishna goes on, by me in my unmanifest form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. So let's go over this very slowly. By me, here's a being, person, standing in front of Arjuna, and he's saying, by me, in my unmanifest form, this entire universe is pervaded. Not just this world, not just this planet, but this entire universe is pervaded. So there is a being, and there is an energy that pervades the entire universe. And now scientists tell us this energy exists. They didn't know it back then. Back then, they didn't have electron microscopes 5,000 years ago, and they couldn't see that what lay behind matter was actually atoms and protons, and that what lay behind even those atoms and protons, if you broke those down further, you would come across waves. So sometimes they appeared as particles and sometimes they appeared as waves, but basically they were waves. And because they were waves, they were energy. So essentially the entire universe, everything you see around you, consists of energy. But back then, 5,000 years ago, Krishna, with no electron microscope, is making this claim that he pervades the entire universe by his energy. His energy is that which pervades the entire universe. So any person who wants to claim themselves to be Bhagavan needs to be able to make such a claim. Can any person say that? And we're going to just give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's right on, maybe he's not. I won't ask you to believe. I will ask you to consider, because that's what intelligent people do. They consider different points of view, right? Emotional people, they believe things. But intelligent people, they consider the possibility that this being is claiming that his energy pervades the entire universe. Now, we could look at this in reverse. Some people say the universe has an intelligence behind it. After you look at the complexity of the universe and you look at all the different manifestations from the flowers to the leaves to the, recently we were looking at grains of sand magnified 300%. There actually, you can do a Google search and you can find this yourself. Grains of sand, 300 that are magnified 300% or more. And they look like works of art, each of these grains of sand. They look like incredible. That means the entire universe, from the snowflake to the particles of sand, to the leaves, to the branches, to the trunks of the trees, to every flower, to every human being, is a work of art. So if this is a work of art, then where's the artist, right? And when we go and we find the artist, they say, well, it can't be a person because this is too big of a feat. This is too incredible of a task. This is not possible for any person to do that. So they speculate that behind this must be an energy, consciousness. And you know what? They're right, but partially right. There is an energy that pervades the universe. There is a consciousness that is behind all of this. But behind that consciousness is a being. Now, some could say from the consciousness comes the being, and others could say from the being comes that consciousness. How does it matter? The point being that there is an intelligence, and the point being that there is a being that is behind it. And Krishna is claiming to be that being, that supreme being from which everything emanates. So he says, by me in my unmanifest form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. And yet everything that is created does not rest in me. He's now giving you many multiple possibilities, and your mind will find itself rather confused. And he says, behold my mystic opulence. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not a part of the cosmic manifestation, for myself is the very source of creation. So let's try to understand this more carefully. The cosmos emanates from him. He pervades everything and yet is separate from it all. Does that make sense? So think of something that would the sun be a good example? The sun rays emanate from the sun, right? And yet the sun is separate from the sun rays. It exists separately. So similarly, he's saying, although the entire universe emanates from me, although I am present in all of it, yet I exist separate from it all. As the sun exists separate from its rays. Is that easy to understand or difficult? Understand that as the mighty wind blowing everywhere rests always in the sky, all created beings rest in me. So we are all resting within his energy. At the end of the millennium, all material manifestations enter into my nature, and at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them again. The whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again, and under my will, it is annihilated at the end. So again, this comes to a very, very relevant point that we're dealing with in our time today, where everyone is really worried about the mess we've created on this planet. Not only on this planet, but in various countries that we've been to, we've created a mess there. And then we've created a mess at the global level in terms of global warming, in terms of all the pollution, in terms of all the different things we've made and created. We made a mess of this planet. And people are worried that in the next 50 to 100 years, this earth will become very close to being uninhabitable. As soon as, even as little as 50 to 100 years from now, I have books like that were written by researchers and through scientific studies and so on and so forth that have the sixth extinction is one of them, where they talk about this, that we may not survive another 50 to 100 years. That the resources of the planet are not sufficient. There's not enough water. There's not enough food grains. If we're going to grow from where we were 100 years ago, well, now maybe 150 years ago, from a population of 1 billion to a population of 7 billion now, 7 times the population that we had just 150 years ago, to now 10 billion is the projection for the next 100 years. There isn't going to be enough water and food for this planet for our children and their children. So what happens? People are worried that life as we know it will come to an end. And if that is so, that is so. But the reality is this: life has been coming to an end, as Krishna just said, millennium after millennium. The entire universe has been collapsed and then recreated again, and then collapsed again, and then recreated again, and then collapsed again, and then recreated again. We may find that inconceivable, and we may think that we are somehow going to save this planet. Unfortunately, I don't have the power to do that. I wish I did. I would love to. It's such a beautiful planet. It is such an incredible creation, and yet the mess we've made in it is somehow irreversible. Maybe we'll manage to save it a little longer. But knowing human greed, as I've seen it, there is no limit to the avaricious, hungry greed of human beings all over the world. And there are people all around the internet teaching us how to be more and more and more greedy, how to become a millionaire and a multimillionaire, and how to do this, how to do that. But all they're doing is feeding people with the most basic instinct of greed. I'm not saying you shouldn't be comfortable and shouldn't have what you need, but greed is where we start accumulating, hoarding much more than we need. So in any case, that is human nature. And human nature will ultimately destroy us, whether we like it or not. We have a question here. Please identify your name before you speak. I just have Zoom user.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I should change my name. Hi. Hi, Rohit.
Hi. How are
Hi.
you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Could be better. So this is what I'm trying to understand, grasp my head around it, right? Society, as you know it kind of runs on greed, right? The economic system itself is based on, like, to some extent manipulating our senses, right? It's like
Which
always
system?
like the economic system is based on the fact.
Economy. Okay. Yeah.
The economy is based on the fact that, allocating scarce resources. In other words, you're trying to optimize everything, even nature, and it has an effect to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
As of now, we didn't find anything else that works better in terms of, what I mean, like, we tried like socialism, we tried different things that didn't work out, right? And like my question is, like, America, if you look at America, one of the reasons is because of free market economy and other factors too, and we are here, we're living here. And so from here, we tried everything else, nothing worked. So what are we gonna do? Like, I'm concerned, like, you're right, I agree with you, like, we are based on, okay, get going after what you want, not knowing the consequence of what that could be for everything else around you. I don't know what to do. Like, I'm just really confused, and I'm not sure.
I'll tell you something very interesting that happens when you start focusing on the most important job at hand.
Mm-hmm.
When you find out what the real purpose of human life is,
mm-hmm.
you will find that the purpose of human life is not to accumulate more and more and more, because whatever you accumulate here, you will leave behind. Even the richest person on earth does not take a penny with him when he dies. And die you will. It could be a year from now, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 70 years. That's about it. And that's nothing in the scope of time. That's nothing. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't have whatever you need. Have your needs, have a comfortable home. That's all right. But don't make the goal of your life, as is this economic system that we live in, which you're talking about. The goal that it tells you is, you know how they say you see these bumper stickers sometimes, the person who has the most toys wins, or the person who, the idea is that the one who has the most wealth, the one who has that person wins the game. No, that's the loser. That's the loser. The goal of life is to find the wealth within you. The real wealth is here. The real wealth, because the real wealth gives you real happiness. gives you real peace, gives you real wisdom, gives you real love, gives you real life, eternal life. That real wealth is here within you. And this wealth is eternal wealth. The person who dies with all their fancy houses and cars and wealth and everything leaves everything behind. But this wealth, this goes with you when you die. This is the only thing you take with you when you die. Because what has happened is, as you practice the spiritual life, especially the things you're learning of here in the Bhagavad Gita, your consciousness evolves. And as your consciousness evolves and grows, you find yourself living in a different world while in this world. You start to experience what many have called heaven on earth, right here, right now. And then as you leave this body, that higher state of consciousness that you've been living in now goes with you at the time of death. And when you come back again to complete your journey, you will find that you will start from a place very different than most people around you. You will start asking questions and you will start seeking at a much younger age than most people. And you will very quickly and rapidly progress in the course of your life as you go further. So these are symptoms of the fact that you've done your work in earlier lifetimes and that you took the wealth of the previous lifetime with you.
That's beautiful.
Am I making any sense?
No, you're right. It does make sense. And you are absolutely right. Like if the middle class thought like that, right? In terms of what you're saying, the economic system would be upside down, right? Because
No, we need a system, just so you know, we need a system in which people can sustain themselves, that is in touch with nature, that sustains nature, that sustains the animals, sustains each other, but is not based on greed.
Yeah.
Right now we have a system called capitalism. To capitalize means to exploit, to take advantage of, right? So if I take advantage of a bunch of people and use them and give them cheap labor and make them work for me so that I can make great profits, sure, I've made great profits, but hundreds, maybe thousands of people are living at the poverty line because of me. I could have been sharing my profits with them, but I don't. I believe that I am here as a capitalist. My job is to make me as rich as possible. And that is greed. Okay. Then you say, oh, so what you're advocating is communism. Everyone should share everything. Hey, that or some degree of distribution can be there. It doesn't have to be so completely extreme that one person is sitting there, got billions of dollars, and his workers are barely getting even the bare minimum salary with which, the minimum wage, while the guy on top is getting billions of dollars every single day. Is that the world we've created? How ridiculous is it? Right?
Absolutely.
What if some of that wealth was distributed? He doesn't have to have that much. What's he going to do with it? Let everyone else at the downside receive more and live a comfortable life. I'm not saying everybody has to be the same. Yes, you innovated something. Fine. But you see, it doesn't have to be communism or capitalism. There can be a more equitable system. It's just a question of us wanting to do that. But anyway, this is not a conversation about economy.
Sorry.
It's the topic. If that's all right with you.
Yeah, I just got caught up there.
Okay. So now Krishna goes on in chapter 9, text number 10, where he says, this material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. Once again, he's asserting that this entire material creation is not only pervaded by him, but is working under his direction, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. Then he says, perhaps one of the most significant statements here, fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. So the foolish and ignorant people say, no, 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 this is not possible. This guy's just making it up. All right. He says, fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme Lord of all that be. It's not surprising that we would question or doubt or even disbelieve. There's no doubt that we are foolish. It's okay. Be foolish, be doubtful, but persevere in trying to find out, because there is nothing else to find out in this world. All the knowledge of the world, all the wealth of the world, like we were saying earlier, will be left behind. This knowledge, if you have it, the knowledge of who you are and who is God, this knowledge will free you from the cycle of birth and death and from the sufferings of material existence. A cycle of birth and death, you might say, well, I don't know if I'm going to be free from that. What proof do I have of that? Okay, but what you can have proof of is this: to become free from the sufferings of material existence. How does that happen, by the way? It happens because, A, you begin to be able to observe your mind, and instead of being in your mind's clutches, the practices the Bhagavad Gita teaches you are, instead of being under the clutches of the mind, you are now, as the soul, able to direct your mind. You are able to watch it, you are able to direct it, and you are able to be in charge of it. In an earlier verse, Krishna had said, for one whose mind is under control, it will be the best of friends. And for one who has failed to control their mind, it will be the greatest enemy. So right now we're living with the greatest enemy, with our mind controlling us. But when we can come, one of the fundamental principles of meditation and spiritual practice is where you are now able to, first step is you're able to observe your mind. If you can observe it, then you can begin to direct it. And then when you can direct it, you can actually control it. You see, it's a process. Your first step is to be able to observe it. If you are fused with your mind, if you are one with your mind, if you are identified with your mind, then you cannot observe it. Then whatever it says, it has you in its clutches. And when it says this thing is bad, then you go, oh my God, this is so bad. This is terrible. They're out to get me. You get sucked in. You're a believer. There is one God that everybody believes in on this planet, even the atheist. Even the atheist has one God that they all believe in. The religious person, the non-religious person, the believer, the non-believer. They all have one God, and that God is their mind. They believe this thing blindly. And to all of them, I tell you, stop believing what your mind tells you. It is not your God. It is not trustworthy. It is not correct. It is not speaking the truth. It is not right what it says. Do not believe it. Plain and simple. Okay, so what should you believe? Nothing. Do not even believe me. Don't even believe what you're hearing in the Bhagavad Gita. Don't believe anything. Be zero, be blank, and observe. Observe your thoughts, observe your mind, watch the games it plays, watch how it gets agitated, how it gets triggered, where it goes. Look at where it's coming from. Oh, so you have this idea. So let's say your mind says, people should not steal. Okay, where do you get this idea from? I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying, to live in society, it's probably a good idea that people should not steal from each other. But where did this idea come from? Oh, it was taught to me. It's not an original idea. It's nothing unique in it. I've just been taught a whole bunch of stuff. Some of it works for me, some of it works for society, and some of it doesn't. I need to be able to observe and question everything. And as I do that, I need to have some kind of yardstick with which to measure things. Should the yardstick be right and wrong? No. Right and wrong is very subjective. What I think is right, you might think is wrong. What you think is wrong, I might think, we can flip it around any way we like. And what is considered wrong in one culture might be right in another. Right now, with When the Taliban takes over in Afghanistan, they're going to, apparently their ways of dealing with women are very, very, the antithesis, absolutely unacceptable for Western thinking. And yet to them, they're absolutely right. The Western world is crazy and they're right. And the Western world thinks they're crazy and we're right. And who's going to decide? Right? So this is how human minds are. When you give the mind that kind of power, it believes. And when it believes, it'll do anything for its belief. It'll kill people for its belief. It will rape, it will murder, it will torture, it will do anything for its beliefs. And we've seen this over and over again through the centuries, from the Crusades all the way down to now. So instead of believing, question and challenge everything. And then look at what works and what doesn't work. What produces harmony? What produces peace? What produces love? What produces the qualities of, so then you say, well, why should we have peace and love even? Whatever, you have to decide on some framework. And I say, take the framework of what lies within you. Feel the energy of what lies within you. And what, to the degree that you can bring that which lies within outside you, that needs to be our effort. If what lies within you is peace, then can we bring peace into the world? If what lies within all of us is love, then can we bring love to the world, unconditional, pure love to the world? If what lies within us is a sense of gratitude, then can we bring that to the world? Right? How can we bring that which lies within into the outer world? This is not an arbitrary standard. This is not a set of commandments. This is not a set of rules or laws or injunctions. This is just the nature of the human soul. Well, I shouldn't call it human soul, the nature of the soul being manifest into the world. If we can do just that much, we've done everything we need to do. We have the yardstick with which to live our lives. Any questions about all this? Especially the last one. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. He has, in fact, where he talks about his form, and he will talk about that a little bit later on, he talks about how he comes in a spiritual form, not a material form. Therefore, no one's able to kill him. No one's able to do anything to him until he decides to leave this world. But till that time, many try to kill Krishna while he's here, and they couldn't. They couldn't hurt him. They couldn't touch him. They couldn't do anything to him. There were so many attacks on him ever since he was a baby. If you read the stories of Krishna, you will see, ever since he was a baby, there were attacks of people trying to kill him. None of them could succeed, even though he was just an infant, even though there was Putana who tried to poison him, even though there was a whirlwind demon who tried to, so many stories. But no, none of them could succeed. That's because he comes in a transcendental form, a non-physical spiritual form, which he then reveals in front of us. So that is what he means by they do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. Transcendental means that which transcends, that which is beyond the material world, the nature of matter. All right, did you have a question, Tia?
I did. I know that my computer is delayed, but I'm on the phone, so I don't know if you can hear it.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So, there's this part that says, I think it's 9:11 and 9:12, fools deride me when I descend in human form. They do not know my nature.
Right.
And those who are bewildered.
We haven't gone there yet.
I
I haven't gone there yet.
Oh.
I've stopped
So
it.
I guess it's back to the other person's earlier comment about people of greed. So, let's say we're trying to, I guess, have this way of life, right? But then if we are doing business with and are seeing greed being rewarded, I think difficult, at least for me, to want to follow, I guess, more of a spiritual path if I see greed being rewarded.
Tia, when greed is rewarded, who is doing the rewarding? Do you think God is a puppeteer who controls everything and does everything? Do you think God does everything and God is controlling everything? If so, then your statement is correct. Then I would never believe in such a God. I would never accept such a God. But there cannot be free will and the idea that God is controlling everything. You cannot have both. You either have free will or you have no will and God is controlling everything. Which one is it? First decide that. Yes, I'm waiting for your answer.
Well, it says in the PDF, like everything is under his.
Yes, even the Bhagavad Gita says that everything is under his direction. However, please understand that this does not apply to human beings and their behavior. This means that the planets are moving in orbit according to his direction. He has set up a certain pattern. Now it's all automated. He's not sitting there personally doing this all the time, right? He's got nothing better to do. It means that the animals, they are also following their nature. Their nature has been designed, and now they follow their nature, right? They do what they are programmed to do, right? They follow their nature. It is only the human being that has free will. A human being can choose to be a murderer or can choose to be a saint. A dog cannot do that. A lion cannot do that, right? A tiger cannot do that. Unless you forcibly entrap them and now they cannot kill, that's another thing. But their nature is to kill. That's how they were designed. You cannot change that. You cannot take it out of them. Maybe if you had them in for long enough and they grew up in a place where they never learned to hunt, but still it would be in them. And somewhere under some provocation, that lion, that tiger would attack, even if they were socialized, if they were completely trained otherwise. Anytime they could turn on you. My point is that when it comes to humans, humans have free will. Therefore, humans are the only beings that have karma. When a lion kills another creature, there is no karma. There is no karma. The animal is acting purely according to its nature and its design, and it has no free will. The human being has free will, and therefore it is the human being that has consequences to their actions. Consequences that last beyond this lifetime. Consequences that determine where they go next. Right? So the human being is never free of consequences. You may say, oh, you managed to get away from jail or the authorities or whatever else in this life. Those consequences go with you life after life until you have paid the price for what you did. So the point being that the human being is not under God's supervision or control. The human being is not a puppet because the human being has free will. The animals are also not under God's control. They have a certain DNA. They have a certain programming in their DNA. And then they follow the nature according to that. Even there, God is not doing anything. If a lion kills a human, it's not because God wanted the lion to kill the human. God is not there. Listen, please understand. God may have designed the universe or may have even had other people design it. I'm sure there's a team of designers out there doing the job, right? I don't think God's even bothering to do all that. If you're the CEO of a company, you don't do everything yourself. It's ridiculous. You have your team. They do the job. And they do the job, they take care of everything, they manage everything. You're the CEO. But then it's still your response. You're the overall head of the company, so to speak. So he's taking that position that everything's happening under my direction. But it doesn't mean that he's controlling every step and every movement. If that was the case, and I went out and murdered someone, well, then it's God's karma. He did it. I didn't do it. It's your problem. You made me kill the person, so therefore you suffer the consequences. Why should I go to jail? Do you see? God should go to jail. If God is the one who's doing everything and I'm just a puppet, then why should I go to jail? Why should I suffer the karma? You get it? So those kind of notions, that is when we start holding God responsible. People say, how can there be so much suffering in the world? What, there cannot be a God if there is suffering in the world. No, the suffering is created by us. We create the suffering and then we blame God. God is just our scapegoat. People do crazy, stupid things to each other and to the world and to themselves. They cause suffering for themselves, they cause suffering for others, and they cause suffering for the planet. Didn't we talk about that in the beginning? Sufferings that are caused by your own self, that is your body, your mind, and so on, and sufferings that are caused by other living beings, and sufferings that are caused from natural occurrences. In this case, we cause suffering to the planet. We cause suffering to each other, and we cause suffering for ourselves. Anybody else? Rima, Gabriel, Mariah, anyone got a question? Swati? All good? All right then. I'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and look forward to seeing you again.
Thank
Likewise.
you.
Take care.
Thanks, Rohit.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.